Brilliant.
Okay, we're recording.
Great, thank you, Matt. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll get started, and as people join, obviously, hopefully they'll see where we're going through with starting the presentation. So this is the second show and tell for the development management software Pathfinders for the 8 different councils. So there's these are every 4 weeks. So let me just, my name's Chantal Danson. So I'm working with DLUC to help with running this. And the agenda is an introduction to the DLUC Pathfinders overview. So Matt will provide that, and then the council introductions from each of their projects. So the team working project updates and outcome progress, and then an open discussion. We may, I think this time we'll probably open up for some questions after each presentation. So that may help sort of with things at the time, sort of that come to people's minds. So okay, Matt, over to you.
Thanks, Chantal. So I know that some of you have heard from me before, so I'll keep this quite brief, reiterate some of the things we've already said, but to anyone who's new, I'm just going to briefly explain why DLUC are funding these Pathfinder projects and what we're hoping they're going to deliver over the next few weeks. So Chantal, if you don't mind going to the next slide. Just in a nutshell, the opportunity here is for local planning authorities to look at how that they can improve their existing planning software in collaboration with their software providers. Simple as that, but fixated on the development management side of things. And the reason behind this, if we go to the next slide, is because we at DLUC are in the middle of a kind of a planning reform agenda, really, and we're pursuing within that a move towards a new, more modular software landscape to encourage digital innovation and provide access to underlying data that hopefully will have the end result of automating routine processes to support faster and more certain decision making. We recognise that we're not going to be able to do this by ourselves, absolutely. We are supporting separately a group of councils to develop some new software for receiving and processing planning applications. That's called the Ripper and Bops project, and if you're interested in that, there's also a series of show and tells around that. But absolutely, we can't take this agenda forward without working with and supporting councils to work with existing providers out there to improve the software that's already there in the market and is already having impact at scale. So that's the opportunity there, really, for councils to really start those conversations. We take this to the next slide, please, Chantal. So this is the list of councils you're going to hear from today. If you're not already familiar with them, there's 8 in total that we're sponsoring, and they're working under 3 different thematic headings around making better use of planning application data, improving the publication of data, and increasing the sharing of reusable components. And we've got 4 of the key kind of software providers represented across the different project teams. So a good spread across the country, and some really interesting projects going on. And then I think onto my last slide, where I just want to reiterate how this might be different from other funding that DLUC provides and that you'll see in the local government space. I think we really see this as I say, an opportunity for councils to work with software providers and to work with other people within their own organisations, whether it's IT teams, transformation teams, in a more blended and collaborative way, to have a regular dialogue and get a better understanding of their needs and the needs of the different users of the service. We hope that this is an opportunity to move away or within this short time frame beyond a kind of traditional commissioning of improvement service, excuse me, kind of relationship. So the emphasis there is on learning. It's not necessarily on developing a solution within just the kind of 12 or 16 weeks that these projects are running across. They're also following the principles of the Local Digital Declaration, so please Google that if you're not familiar with it. It's a set of 5 principles that over 250 local planning authorities and other kind of organisations working in the local government space have committed to around how they believe local services and local digital services should be designed in the future. So really worth looking at those as kind of guiding principles for how we hope that the Pathfinder projects are working. And then very last but not least, quite self-evident here, Chantel's already alluded to it, there's going to be monthly show and tells on this. This is just the second one, and also monthly blog post updates. And the next one of those is going to be published in 2 weeks' time. It's published on the local digital collaboration unit Medium page, but if you are not receiving those and you'd like to, you can catch them by Twitter, following at LDGovUK, and I guess if we want to, yeah, we can send out emails just letting you know when they're live to anyone that's looking to receive those specifically. So do get in touch with us, Chantel specifically, or digital planning team at levellingup.gov.uk. Thanks, Chantel. Back over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Matt. Right, over to the project updates. So we are starting off with Colchester Borough Council, and Catherine, I believe you're covering this for Colchester today. Thank you.
I am indeed. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Catherine Eller, and I work for NEC Software Solutions. And we're lucky enough to have or be involved in two Pathfinders that are going on at the moment. So I'm here today representing Simon Cairns from Colchester Borough Council, who can't unfortunately make today's call. But I'd just like to give you a brief update on where we are with the Colchester project. So if you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so in our blog post and the application detail itself, what this project is all about is how a member of the public can interact with geospatial data in the context of doing planning applications and what benefits that could bring. So what we've done is to have a couple of workshops so far, which have been fantastic and really creative. And I can't thank Colchester enough for involving us in such an open conversation. I have to say, I was mentioning to Chantel before, you know, it's definitely broadening my view of where we need to start the journey. Where we have started is we thought we were going to start bang on the, starting the planning application, but Simon was very eloquent in describing the fact that, firstly, we need to make it far more intuitive, and we need to make sure that people are led through the journey. And Colchester have very much a vision of the member of the public, and typically a householder. We've decided to concentrate on householders. Where they would start the journey would be on an interactive map on the Colchester website. So what we've looked at first is, well, what information, what data would need to sit behind that interactive map that they already have to enable a householder to commence a planning application? And how can we make it an intuitive journey for them? So we thought, well, that's great. If we can sort that out, they would then go to our planning application. And you can see there, I've put a screenshot in of something that it within can be configured by the authority. But we talked about how things being too wordy and too jargony just wasn't good enough for this householder who may make a planning application once in their lifetime. So if you see the next step, please, Chantel. So that the whole thinking around that was, okay, well, how can we in the first place help them understand if they need permission in the first place, and how can we make sure they get taken to the correct application type to stop invalid applications getting through, and as I mentioned, being led through this unfamiliar process. So we've started to go down, which I think is probably a well-trodden path. Chantal, please, if you could click those up, of looking at things like PlanX, chatbots, how advice and guidance could be given to the householder as they make that planning application or before they make that planning application. So they're things that we are exploring as part of the project. But as I say, it's a fairly well trodden path, that. So we are scooping up any discovery work that's already been done to start that part. So then we're starting to think about, well, where are we going next? Move on to the next one, please. And the vision is very much, and with the planning reform white paper in mind, how can we use that live spatial data to help us automate the obvious decisions Simon has given us a few examples where he thinks that actually there's a clear yes or a clear no in particular. And we've also discussed perhaps giving a likelihood of approval, almost like a swingometer of how likely you are to get approval based on that geospatial data we know, because the person has started from that point, and we know the policies, conditions, all sorts of local information that's around that property. We've also discussed whether there is enough data stored from historic applications to start to do some machine learning to determine whether thing is a likelihood of it, a yes or a no. And this is all with a view to filtering out and triaging and automating as much as possible the planning application process. So what we think this could lead us to see, if you'd like to go on to the next one, is here's a very simple user journey, if you like. The resident starts the journey on the Colchester corporate GIS. They indicate where their property is. We know from where they are the data surrounding them. So, for example, we know if they're in a conservation area or an area of natural beauty, etc., and all other pieces of data that we can draw into that interactive map. The resident at that point will indicate what their wish is, what they intend to do, what they'd like to do, what their extension is, what the building is that they want to do. And we will then attempt to automate not only the validation, but where possible, the decision. And if it's a clear no, we can give advice and guidance on what to do next, whether that's, well, look, you'll never get this type of building done, but if you went down this route, it might be more successful. If you could go on to the next one, please, Chantal. Why? Well, why do we want to do this? Obviously, we believe that there's big efficiencies to be made here, potentially some revenue generating work for the local authority, and definitely to introduce some consistency and transparency to the member of the public, because an interesting anecdote of someone that had spoken to a member of the planning department recently was that they still felt it was very much a whim or who you spoke to on the day, whereas if we can make decisions consistent and appear fair and transparent, there would be a greater public interaction and involvement in the planning process, and increase the knowledge of how the planning system works. I'm not sure if that's my last one. Is that my last one, Chantal? It is. It is. So yes, where we are is, as I say, we're 2 workshops down. Lots of actions kicked off, and we're due to have another workshop next week.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you. Right. Mark, over to you for the London Borough of Harrow, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. If you could just go to the next slide, just what I wanted to do was just briefly recap on what our objectives are. So our aim of our submission was to address the inefficiencies, delays in our consultee commenting process. To do that, we are looking at our end-to-end process mapping and then overlaying those with issues that we've identified along the way with discovery work with customers and also our planning officers as well. Ultimately, what we aim to do is introduce streamlined processes and new technologies by reviewing the NEC's new Assure system, their consultee module, and then identifying the areas that we can enhance on the product, and then ultimately give ourselves a to-be process for how we can move our teams into the new product. Okay, moving on. So our achievements to date so far is that we've been updating our processes internally. So we've made changes to our existing as-is maps and updated those with new processes that we've been introducing around within our teams and our planning areas. We've with the discovery work we've done, we've put in overlays of the issues onto the process maps, because that identifies exactly where the problems are, which we'll see. I've put some example process maps in as well. And then we've provided this information to NEC so that we can put a workshop together to merge this with how the new Assure product works in that consultee module. And again, we'll have a look at that in a minute. And then we've also reviewed our technical architecture, which we've kind of also put into our process maps as well. So we've kind of got a rounded picture of how we actually process our works, how we process our work going or today. So this next slide, I'm not going to go through each one of these. This is just an example of the high level customer comments on a planning application, how it works and what we've been doing with our process maps. So our process maps are in two parts. So we've got the first one, which is the customers comments to the planning application, and then the second part is the back office, how the application, the responses to the consultee are managed within the system itself. So what we've done is we've put a end-to-end process map together of the activities, and then we've color coded it to where it actually hits the different systems. So we've got two different systems in play within our current architecture, which is Civica and MVM on there as well. So we can just see from the process maps what's going on, which system it hits, and then what are the issues that are overlaid. So you can see those kind of dialogue boxes that sit over the actual process blocks, what is actually happening and where customers have come back to us with issues. And so that kind of gives us a good picture of what needs to be done. If you move on to the next slide, Chantal, that's the second part we've done. So this is the processing the actual consultee comments. And again, there's a bit more interaction with different systems and then emailing going on and different interaction with different teams on there as well. But again, it follows the same format of an end-to-end process of how the consultee response comes into the system, how it's processed and how information is fed back into the customers as well. We've actually reviewed these in a little, we've had some kind of internal workshops as well, looking at how really kind of with the discovery work, we've had lots of good feedback from customers and from the planning officers as well. And we've had a good look at these and how it kind of, in a way, we've kind of stood above this and tried to look at what's actually happening that's causing us different pain points. And if you go to the next slide, Chantal, what we found is things like this. So we found some sort of overriding issues, some kind of unwanted feedback loops, if you like. So this one, just by what's going on in the process, we found that customers are going through this process of resubmitting their comments, because they're not getting any they're not getting a timely receipt confirmation from us. So what's happening is on the top part there, they submit their forms and they resubmit. It goes then into it hits our system, and there's a process where we have a team who go through the submissions that are given to us, and they will go through each one of those and they will weed out where there are duplicates on there. And sometimes this can be, although it seems a kind of simple process of going through and removal of duplication on there, what we're finding is, like, a typical application can have hundreds of comments on there, and potentially there might be something like 150 or 100 or so legitimate comments on there. That might be an issue, or what we're actually seeing is something like 200 comments if there are resubmissions on there as well. So it's weeding out those duplications. And if you can imagine as well that if we're getting multiple applications as well, that's a lot of work for our teams to go through on a kind of daily, weekly basis. So then that is it kind of compounding the problem that they're having to weed out those issues. Then it's having a delay in us actually sending a receipt back to the customer. So then the customer, because they're not getting a receipt back, they send more submissions through. So we're seeing things like this. So there's a kind of cause and effect. And although it's very simple, it's a very simple issue that's here, it is something that causes a lot of problems for our teams. And it's manual work at the end of the day. There's people that are actually going through and having to open and read every single one of these. So it is a problem that we're having. And so if you want to go onto the next slide, And so what we've done is we've kind of taken all this internal information, all this good information, and we've fed it back to NEC. And then what we've done is NEC have kindly put together, we had a workshop to go through this with the aim of identifying where the product can mitigate some of these issues we're having, typically what we've just seen there, and then also where potentially the product can be enhanced as well. And then also for us, it identifies areas where we can change our own processes internally, because this is a kind of balanced approach between process and technology as well. So if you go to the next slide, so as I say, NEC, as part of the workshop they provided, they showed us an end-to-end example of the consultee process on there, which was really good. So they took us through actual screens on this and on the system that they have. This is just one example from Assure of what it can do in terms of consultations for statutory consultations on there. This one typically shows how a consultation can be tailored for a specific area, something like highways, where they can see applications where they will need to consult on, which just relate to them. So that kind of resolves an issue where we don't need to look, where they don't need to do searching around for to search for any applications where they would need to comment on. It also shows where there's automation. In that it's automatically fed to them. This could also be, potentially sort of set up for customers as well, where they can be consulted or they can pick up applications which are only applicable to them, where they would need to consult on as well. So that there's good potential here for introducing automation. It also shows where what we've also seen with the workshop that we did was where the automation from the customer information that's going in goes into the system, and then it's kind of updated into the system so that we don't need to do any rekeying between the different systems we had. As I mentioned before, we've got two systems in play. We've got MVM and Civica. So there is, although there is an integration between those, there is manual processes for updating in those as well. So what the new system has shown us, it's shown us really well how we can have one system that will pick up this information, and it can automate the information to customer or to our from our customers into the system. It can automatically feed back to the customers an automated receipt with timestamps on there as well, which kind of negates the problem we've had before. So there's some really good opportunities for time saving on here. We've also seen some enhancements, and one of the enhancements we looked at was whether we could automate the process of not even having to select whether we send a confirmation back to the customer, whether that can be automatically done as soon as they submit their comment. An automatic receipt goes back. So it's been really good. It's been sort of really good example of that. I was really pleased with the workshop that we did for that. The workshops, so this first workshop was addressing the customer end-to-end piece on how they get the information across from the website and into the system. And if you move on to the next slide, so we did get a taster for the second workshop that we're going to have, and this was to do with how the planning officers manage information. So this was a really good example of where a particular property is outlined, and then automation can be put in place to identify which consultees need to be identified, and then how we can manage the responses or review the responses, whether we're getting supporting comments back from the customers or objections, and also what their commentary is on there as well. It was a really good example of seeing how that automation through GIS actually picks up and can collate that information into one picture, if you like, because something like this would be really useful in seeing, you know, exactly what the responses are. Because as you can see on this map, there are the black dots signify where there are automated or consultees that need to be responded, but it is open to a wider consultee as well, and you can see that there are some responses from a wider scope on there as well. So I'm looking forward to that workshop, and I'm sure there's some good technology we're going to have a look at going forward with that. And so the next slide, the next steps for us are to, as I say, have that second workshop to look at that back-end processing, and then also internally we're going to look at some of our web front-end options with our digital teams, and then also refine our user and system processes following that first workshop we had. And that is my update.
That's great. Thank you very much, Mark. So are there any questions from anyone at this stage, or shall we move on to the next project?
Got a question from Hannah Brooks in the chat, Chantal. Imagine you can't see it if you've got your screen share on.
Unfortunately. Yeah. So
Hannah, would you like to come on the camera, or I can read this out?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, my name's Hannah Brooks. I'm from GeoPlace. I'm one of the local authority liaison managers, so we work with address data custodians. I was just wondering about, there's a few of these systems have made reference to you know, linking up, picking up property records and that sort of thing, and I just wanted to know if there was any specific reference to whether they were using local address gazetteer or address-based data was going to be used to link up records in these systems by using the UPRN. So that's a unique property reference number. I imagine some of them will, but because most local authority planning systems are integrated with the UPRN, but just to kind of to make sure that was what it helps to, you know, reduce duplication and address input errors, and enables integration with other council data sets. So I'm just reading my question back aloud, so that makes sense. Yeah, so I just wanted to know if there was any kind of specific intention to incorporate that in these systems that are being developed.
Shall I answer that? It's Catherine from NEC.
yes, by all means, Catherine. Thank you.
Yeah, well, in terms of the last two presentations you've seen, in terms of the geospatial for Colchester and what Mark's just eloquently described at Harrow, then yes is the answer. We've got the UPRN, you know, running all through our system. So any address-based data has the UPRN associated with it, and so it's the common thread.
That's great. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for your question as well. So, right, moving on to Basingstoke-and-Deane, which is Greg or Martin? I'm not. Is it Martin?
Greg.
Oh, Greg. Okay, Greg. So
I got my video on after last time, and I crashed everybody, I think. Martin is here if there are any questions on any of the technical stuff, which there might well be. So our next few slides, they just outline the progress we've made over the last month, really. First one. So the first outcome, options to create the reporting end data flows. So obviously there have been some technical challenges, as probably everybody's experienced, to overcome to achieve our connections to the source data. So a main issue we found was the difficulty experienced installing, and this is where the technical language comes in, the Oracle 64-bit client software correctly. I think the people who are trying to get it to run initially had the 32-bit client. Apparently it was very simple, but required support from our IT team around admin rights to complete that successfully. So over the next period, we'll obviously document the design of what we're looking to do across the current Pathfinder, and then the final design, and that'll be in a schematic version to show the implementation of the plan and Power BI gateway, which we think is going to be our preferred method. The next slide. So requirements for Power BI is the next outcome, licensing and resources, etc. So the progress so far, we've identified that for having all these dashboards, all the users will need to have Power BI Pro licenses, which you can either purchase individually, additionally, or as part of a wider package. from Microsoft. So at the moment, whilst we're in this stage 1, as we call it, of Pathfinder and our journey towards getting Power BI, we've moved towards getting everybody in the technical team the licenses, which obviously comes with a relatively small cost, considering the technical team isn't that large in comparison to the size of the overall council if we were to fully implement it in the future. Obviously, there will at some point need to be some formal training to equip key officers to be able to design, develop, maintain our dashboards, even insofar as if we manage to do an initial concept dashboard as part of our Pathfinder program, which isn't part of our initial bid, but if we manage to do that, then all the better. And yeah, resource is always a problem, so we'll have to take a look at how we do that and how we do it within the wider team as well. Next dashboard, please. Thank you. So progress so far around systems and server considerations. We've only discussed most of it in theory at the moment. So when we have all of the council users trying to access it in the future, there's a question over what that means for the council systems. It's hard to say really, because we haven't implemented it yet. But ultimately, we think that the Power BI gateway, which is like an initial holding house in between the system and the actual final dashboards, will mean that the data loads don't require too much in terms of server resource. Next slide, please. So outcome 4, just a shared view of the value of the benefits to local planning authorities. So what our final outcome will be. So progress so far, got an idea of the framework of the final report that we need to be doing, that Martin will be starting work on in earnest. The next period, he hopes to have got to the point where the majority of that report is put together, with any gaps that need to obviously be finished off in the final few weeks, as we're mindful of the overall timetable of the Pathfinder programme. By doing that, it allows him to come up with the early drafts. And then alongside that, we're doing another report that kind of says, well, how do we intend to proceed with this internally at Basingstoke? Next slide, please, Chantal. Just in terms of other progresses, there's there's two bubbles there. The first, we're arranging workshops with our planning team and the managers within the planning team to try and work out what our final dashboards might actually look like and how they'll work, because we think that would be of benefit if we know what we might want it to look like in the future, so that we know how we can set up everything internally at this kind of envisaging stage. And then the second one is just something that we happen to have noticed through setting up the connections and establishing that initial connection with Power BI. It immediately allows us to see that some of the data sets that are in the system have some missing fields, and there are some inconsistencies there that we can look at. So it provides us with an additional opportunity to do some data cleansing. So it's an unexpected benefit. I think that's it in terms of slides from us.
Yep, that's great. Thank you very much, Greg.
Thank you.
Okay, so are there any questions from anyone from Greg's overview on their project, or shall I move on to the next one? Okay, thank you. Right, Evelyn, Sevenoaks, over to you, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Chantal. So I'm Evelyn Gilder from Sevenoaks District Council. I'm working as a lead applicant on this project along with Fraser McGregor, who's the GIS manager at Sevenoaks. Unfortunately, he's double booked this afternoon. He won't be here, but hopefully I'll be able to take you through what we've done so far. So the aim of our project was to make more information available online to customers relating to trees, in particular constraints, to enable customers to submit applications to carry out works of trees much more in a quicker and more simple way. Thank you. Next slide, thanks. So at the moment, what we'd like to do is create a more user-friendly process that can be accessed on demand at the time when the customer would like to do so, and not be restricted by our business hours. So we have thousands of privately owned trees in the district, and at some point or other, the owners of those trees, generally householders, may want to carry out works to those trees, and they may need to come to us for permission. In order to find out whether a tree is covered by a preservation order or situated in a conservation area, customers can already do so by using our interactive map that has been developed in-house by the GIS team, and it contains by address all manner of information from planning history through to dozens of different constraints. So at the moment, a customer can go online, type in their address, find out whether the tree is protected or whether they live in a conservation area. We currently receive around 1,000 inquiries a year for that information, and we signpost customers to the website. And what they can't, though, do is download a copy of the tree preservation order at the moment. They have to come to us and ask us for a copy of that to determine whether they need to make the application or not, whether the actual tree that they want to carry work out on is protected. We receive about 700 applications a year for works to trees that are either protected or in a conservation area. Outside of this process is the process for carrying out emergency works to trees, because we'll turn that round in 24 hours. There isn't a formal application process for that. So the aim of this really is to make more information available online, such as the tree preservation orders. We hold those orders on our document management system. We work with Uniform and iDocs, and Enterprise wraps around Uniform and iDocs as a workflow and workload management tool. But we currently have about 20 to 30 years worth of tree preservation orders stored in our document management system, and the aim of this is to make those public. We have some historic TPO orders on paper, and we'll get those scanned and also make those available publicly. And the aim really of doing this is to free up officer time, to build capacity for officers, because there's no point in us answering queries and sending out information when we could or should be making that information available online. And also create a standard. We're hoping to create a process that other councils might be interested in following as well. I think it's important for consistency for customers. Most of the customers that we have that submit applications to carry out works to trees are landscaping companies and tree surgeons. And we're hoping that by word of mouth, those that work across the South East will share this with each other and other councils, and hopefully promote this service that we're offering. Okay, next slide, thank you. So the existing process is that a customer will identify that they need to carry out work to their tree on their land. They can access our online map and then contact us for a copy of the TPO. If the tree is protected, then they'll need to ask us for a copy of the TPO of the order, and that usually happens by phone or email, and that we will turn that round within a couple of days where possible. And that the customer can then submit their application either by email, by post, via the planning portal, whichever they choose. We don't promote a particular service, we just give them the options, and it's up to them. You know, they can, you know, they can drop off a planned application if an application if they want to. We've been open for the last couple of years. Customers are still, although about 95% of applications come in electronically, we still do get customers who prefer to post them in or drop them off at the offices. Okay, next slide. This is an example of our online map, and as you can see, I've just picked a property that's near to the council offices that has a tree preservation order on it. The aim of this project is that the customer can take this one step further, click on that order number, download a copy of the order, and then follow a link to an application, an online application form via our website. Okay, next slide. So the proposed process really is that the customer can identify if they need to carry out the work to tree, check the online map, ascertain the status of the tree, download a copy of the order, then follow a link to our website where we'll have an online form created. We've already created a similar form for reporting an enforcement breach and submitting pre-application inquiries. So we're just going to take that one step further with the application for works to trees. They can then submit that application, and that will then be loaded into our document management service. We're working with iDocs to enable this process to happen, along with our in-house development team of software engineers, to both publicise the TPOs, create the online form, enable the download of that information and the application form into Uniform, ready for our validation team to assess and acknowledge. They currently acknowledge applications within 5 working days, and then the customer will be kept updated via the notifier texting service. We've been updating customers on progress of applications for the last 3 years via the notify service. So part of this process will adapt that slightly to work around the tree processes, which don't necessarily sit in line with the standard 13-week application processes for planned applications, and just make that text more bespoke to that particular customer. And yeah, I think we're making progress. As I said, we've got key information from iDocs to help us move forward since our last show and tell 4 weeks ago, and most of this now will be done in-house with our GIS team. Fraser's team is working very hard alongside our other IT colleagues to create this, to first and foremost to make sure that the TPOs are publicised, and then create the online form. And then the benefits of this really will be to the customer in being able to submit an application in 20 minutes rather than take 2 or 3 days because they're waiting for us to give them information. And also key to this is the connector. So the connection from our website or online form into Uniform and the document management system, so that the process takes either overnight, as it does now with the planning portal and applications, or we download applications once a day from the planning portal. So really the process could be instant from when an application is submitted to being downloaded into Uniform, and then it's there ready for us to work on. And then key to this is that we will roll out the connector to enable us to work with enforcement and pre-application inquiries as well, so that if somebody submits a report for an enforcement breach, alleged breach, then that report can download into Uniform as well. And the same with pre-application inquiries. Currently we receive those, most of those come in via our website, but the documents come in separately. So key to this, the benefit is reaches beyond just the works of the trees applications. It does have a wider benefit to customers and to staff. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Evelyn. That's great. So, is there any questions from Evelyn's slides for the TPO side of things? No. In which case, I will move on now to North Devon Council, please. Nina, I believe that may be yourself, because
I think it's me, Chantal Maria.
Maria, sorry, I wasn't sure whether you were
I
available.
know,
So
you,
great.
you keep trying to get Nina to do it. Although that's all right, Chantal.
It's fine.
Thank you. Hi, yeah, I'm Maria Bailey. I'm the Planning Service Manager at North Devon Council. And just a quick recap of our project. I won't go over it too much. Next slide, Chantal. Obviously, we are looking to basically de-risk our Section 106 process at the moment, and we're working with DEF, our development management software provider, to basically translate our to-be process into a really slick and efficient service to everybody, really. It's something that we had been starting to develop prior to being awarded the money. It's something that's been tested and accepted by all our business users, with the idea of basically, rather than having all the various access spreadsheets we've got all over the place within various departments of the council and also outside of the council, that it's held in one system and we ensure a very clean and transparent process. And again, that we're looking to share it with all interested parties, and they can use the specification for their own systems. Next slide, please, Chantal. So our project objectives, as I've said, de-risk it once all the improvements are delivered, have all the contributions and all the contributors confidently using the system to populate and report from. And I think one that we're very pleased we've developed is the healer module that we're looking at with DEF, and we've achieved that. Basically, healer is very much the start of the planning process. We've started our local plan review. Our past local plan, one of the key difficulties we've had is viability. Most of our allocations are coming in with viability assessments, basically saying that they cannot deliver what they'd agreed to when it was allocated in the plan. So we feel it's very important that we start collecting the right information right at the start of the process, so that what comes out at the end is something that is achievable. And we've had a number of detailed conversations with DEF so that they can fully understand what we're looking to achieve. Objective 4, ability to produce with confidence all the reports we need to, whether they're government reports or whether they're reports for our own members, reports for those that are paying the contributions, and of course our parish and town councils as well. And again, finally, obviously, we share our experience. Hopefully we have got a good, clean process that others will find all of it, if not parts of it, really useful. Next slide, please. So where are we then? We've got sort of 5 tranches of work. The planning stage is complete. The initiation is complete, with the final thing being supplier confirmation of capacity, capability to deliver. We're now moving on to the delivery and development phase before we then go on to obviously closure and review. So just talking about a little bit what we've been doing. Next slide, please, Chantal. We had our kick-off meeting with DEF, very interesting. I think some of you, again, obviously, you know, there had to be some stark realities in terms of timescales, with all these suppliers obviously helping out quite a number of authorities, not only on these projects, but other projects as well. So we've now got a detailed project plan, which has been refined into 4 phases based on our suppliers' capacity to deliver. So we are, you know, we're trying to make sure this is really achievable, and we're not going to be hindered by having to pull things back. A detailed specification has been provided to DEF for the development of our healer process, which will potentially be a new module which will be contributing to our joint local plan review. I think it's key there as well. We do our local plan with our neighbours, Torridge, and there are complications of doing a joint local plan review. So again, even across authorities, it's about getting information all in the one place, so it's accessible across both the planning authorities. We've worked with our procurement team to vary our existing contract and raise a purchase order for phase 1. Sounds simple, but I think, as you know, sometimes that can take a bit of time, and it did, but we've got there. Next phase, next slide, please. We've involved our ICT to understand the technical requirements for Lean and Agile. Now, Lean and Agile is a software that basically takes the guesswork out of efficiency savings, and also looks at process maps and what they can do to assist the authority, and really takes out some of the legwork that we've been spending quite a lot of time on doing over the past years, really. So we're looking at the procurement of Lean and Agile, which is now progressing, and our finance team, thankfully, have agreed to build in revenue costs for year 2, at the end of which will evaluate the success of the product in the business. You know, we won't just go on blindly. Obviously, we're looking at it, it looks fantastic, but we need to evaluate it and make sure it is actually creating efficiencies for us. We've met a lady from Leeds to talk through our proposals, and obviously, as I say, we work very closely with our neighbours, Torridge, so they have had our 2B map, and we continue obviously to get across to as many people as possible the good work that we're trying to do through this project. So a lot going on, but as I say, we're now going into the implementation phase, so it'll get even more exciting.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so a nice finishing slide there. So any questions for North Devon whilst before we go on to the next project? Okay, all right, moving on to Tewkesbury, please.
Yeah. So our project is for a planning application tracker, and this will be open to applicants and agents, so they can sort of track their application as it moves through the stages. So we've done a lot of the background work, really. So starting with process mapping, as a lot of you do. So we've mapped sort of the process that a planning application goes through, and we've identified the stages that we want to cover initially in the planning application tracker. So that's just really that the application's been received, it's been validated or invalidated, what the 8-week target date is, and then moving on to what the officer's recommendation is, and then the actual decision. So they're sort of the key stages of the application that we've picked out initially to look at for the planning application tracker. Then we've worked with the planning team to identify the features that the system must have to be successful for them. So this has included sort of lots of things around how this information is displayed and how clear it is for people to see. But we have also captured additional features that would be nice to have. So yeah, so there's also lots of things. We've sort of looked at what our minimum viable product is for the 12 weeks that we've got, and then what we could then expand it to in the future. Next slide, please. We've also done a lot of work in identifying our data requirements. So we've used the process mapping and the scoping sort of work that we did to then look at what pieces of data do we need to extract from the database in order to display that on the tracker. But as I've mentioned, we've not just focused on the information that we needed for this project, but also what we might want to display on there in future. So that could be expanded to invalid reasons, consultation responses when they've been received, the end dates for consultations, and even GIS data, so we can sort of display where this application is on a map and things like that. So there's sort of lots of things that we've looked at doing sort of further down the line, but we've just looked at what the the basics will be for the 12 weeks to start with. Next slide. So we're working with iDocs, our supplier. We've sort of sent them over what our data requirements are, and they've identified that they have a planning connector available, which will give us the majority of our data and will definitely provide the data that is needed for the initial planning application tracker. So that is going to be installed next week on Tuesday, the 8th of March. And then that will then provide us with the data to move on to the next stages. Next slide. So next, we will create a mock-up design of how the planning application tracker will look and will feel for the user. And we'll make sure that this is consistent with our branding on our website and on our other online services. And we'll work with the planning team as well to make sure that they're happy with how we're displaying this information. It's really important that it's clear and concise and makes sense to the end user. We don't want it to make it more confusing and generate any more calls. Then we need to build a public API to pull the information from the planning connector and display that on the application tracker. We'll also have templated emails and text messages so that they can be sent out when an application moves through the stages. And then obviously we'll look to build the sort of initial application tracker and then look to move and add the additional features in. I think that's a very quick whistle-stop tour of where we're at with our application. I don't know if anyone's got any questions or anything.
Thank you very much, Amy. So any questions for Amy?
I've got a quick one. Sorry, I'm Manny Singh from Wealdon District Council. What's the difference between this and the public access system?
So this will sort of feed into our public access system or vice versa. This is just going to sort of display information rather than having to search it. What we have feedback that we've sort of had is that the public access system isn't necessarily easy to use, or you have to have certain bits of information to find it. This will sort of display initially just as a link to the applicant or agent, so then they can click on this link and sort of track their application through there. But we would look to make it public to everybody and display on the website.
Right. Thanks.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Great.
Also got James Garrett from Planning Portal had his hand up. Chantal. Sorry, I know you can't see the hands and things.
I can't.
Sorry, I should have waved and shouted.
No problem.
No, just in terms of the public API pulling information from the planning connector, obviously I can speak on behalf of Planning Portal, but obviously that's something that wider sector might well be interested in terms of surfacing progress on planning applications in all sorts of systems, or professional or otherwise. Is that something, when you say a public API, is that something that will be available for other parties to query and consume that information from?
Yeah. Sorry, I'll do you want me to come in there?
Joe.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it will be public and as as we say, open to whoever to query. So we'll sort of standardize the data that's coming out, and it can be one of the use cases we did have from actually our parish councils was that they wanted to be able to query applications that were just in their area. So that's something we've kind of got in the back of our minds. We can sort of kill two birds with one stone, expose that data so they can surface it however they see fit.
No, that's useful. Thank you very much. We may well be in touch.
Lovely.
Yes, please do let me know if you want me to put you in touch with anybody from this. I can sort that out for you. And yes, it's great to sort of actually have something like that that's made available for public use. That's brilliant. So thank you very much.
Terry Ann's got her hand up as well.
Sorry.
Yes, just on the planning application tracker, you're talking about something that's slightly more queryable or sophisticated than public access. Then I think you're saying, and there's a bit more targeted for groups of people. Is that did I pick up that you're saying not yet for the public, but for certain queries?
Well, just to meet the 12-week target date, what we would do initially is just make it available for the applicant and agent, and we would use it as sort of a prototype approach. So we'll sort of see how they use it, get any feedback and things moving forward. But yeah, it would be something that in long term we're looking to just have available, so anybody that's interested in a certain application can go and track its progress, and you know, if it goes through to appeal, if it goes committee decision, we can expand the tracker and make more available. But yeah, initially just for the 12-week, we're looking at making it for applicants and agents.
And is this with IDOC's uniform system? It's not with their newer Tascamy product?
No, it's with IDOC's uniform.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it seems to cut quite an obvious thing to have done, actually. I think it's a very clever idea, because it's probably something people think about a lot but don't get around to doing. But interesting to think about future cloud sort of hosted products, and can't quite get my head around that at the moment, but you know, which is probably a direction of travel for most councils, I think. So yeah, no doubt IDOCs will come up with something for that though.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you.
And thanks, Amy, for answering that one. Anything else? Any other questions that I can't see on the message board at the moment? Okay.
Yeah, we've got Helen.
Oh, Helen as well. Okay.
Helen, looks like you're in a battle with your mute button there.
Sorry, as usual. That's really interesting. I just wondered, what are the sort of trigger points that you're thinking about in terms of putting in there? And because obviously with public access at the moment, as soon as you change status, you obviously either can get alert or you can see that. So what additional sort of steps or triggers are you popping in there?
Well, we're working really closely with the planning team at the moment to sort of identify that. So at the moment we've got the basics, which probably will cross over with public access to a certain extent. But yeah, we're looking at what fields there are in uniform that they populate, that then we would be able to trigger a move in our planning application tracker. So it's not necessarily just done on the status, it's also looking at the fields in uniform and dates that are populated in there that we could then trigger sort of moving the application tracker on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you both. Right. Okay. Anyone else, or shall we? We'll move on to the next one. We can have some more questions at the end, by the way, as well. So thank you, Amy. I will now move on to Nottingham City Council, which is Mick, I believe it's yourself.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to keep my video off because I've got a few network issues. If you lose me, I'll have to dial it.
Okay, no worries.
So a quick update from me. Can I just have the next slide, please, Chantal? Okay, so just a quick reminder in terms of what our objectives and associated outputs are. Our focus is to improve and make our back-end data management processes more efficient and effective generally. And to do this, we're looking to utilise and develop two new software products from existing suppliers. So namely Uniform Enterprise and FME Server. And we're going to use these products to test and demonstrate process improvements, which focus on the statutory returns data, PS1 and PS2, as an example data set. But the processes that we're going to introduce, the data management process we're going to introduce as part of the Pathfinder, will enable us over time to provide timely access of planning data generally, and ultimately improve its value to a wider audience. So, so the core focus of the project is about data management processes. As you can probably appreciate, perhaps not so sexy and definitely not very visually attractive. But as part of the project, we will be developing some dashboards and querying tools to demonstrate how these processes can easily support multiple outputs. Yep, so it's kind of efficiency in terms of data management, so that you can use these approaches and publish data out openly into performance dashboards. We were hoping to push the data directly, push the government return directly into the Delta system, but we've had to pull that one because they weren't quite ready for us to kind of try and test that. If we could have the next slide, Chantal, please. So my focus is really about what we've been doing, as opposed to, well, really, what have we been doing? We've been laying the foundations really of the project that will enable us to do the development phases later on. So we've done a lot of work in terms of establishing our stakeholder groups internally, so with our planners, business support, my team, the GIS team. Lots of conversations with our suppliers, iDocs and One Spatial, and also conversations with project sponsors and others involved in the programme. I think one of the key things, and perhaps one of the most challenging things, was the procurement necessary to enable this project to take place. So, you know, we've now got all the procurement activities now in place and approved and actioned so that we can move forward. So without that, we couldn't get the software installed, we couldn't do the necessary training, we couldn't really take the conversations too far with our suppliers without an order. So I think we did quite well to kind of get that sorted out in the first 2 weeks. So this has meant that we've now installed the additional software components and had all that configured, received the associated training, so both with our planners, GIS team and business support, both of which things, you know, without the software, without the training, we couldn't progress the project. So it's kind of fundamental milestone for us, because we're now in the stage where we can look at our fine-tuning our thinking in terms of what the true deliverables of this project are, given the time frames that we've got. And the training was also required because it allowed us to understand what the art of the possible and help us to clarify what the deliverables are and what the associated development should be going forward in the time given. It's all about the time really, because 12 weeks is not long at all, as my other colleagues will probably appreciate. We have held quite a few initial workshops with the suppliers and planners, both in terms of the training, but also, like I said, setting out those deliverables. I think we've made really good progress in 4 weeks in February, but March is probably going to be a challenging time because we now need to engage with, we need quite a lot of engagement with our planning team and our suppliers when it's kind of month-end close down. So we might have to give some consideration to reprofiling our delivery plan. Can I have the next slide, please, Chantal? So this is what we set out to do. This was our programme, and so far we're on track. It does feel like 4 weeks have passed extremely quickly, but we're making good progress against the original plan. The next 4 weeks is when we're getting really into the bread and butter of it all. So we'll be getting a better understanding of the tools that we've now got available to us, reviewing the business processes and workflows around that target data set that we mentioned, starting to generate data models and queries, and starting to develop some prototype tools to help guide production of the data models, the queries and the exports. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour from me. Thank you.
That's great, thank you, Mick. Okay, any questions from Mick's overview from Nottingham, or shall we move on to the final one? Okay. Over to finally London Borough of Havering, which is I believe, is it Matt or Georgia?
Hi, Santel. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, it will be me and Matthew, of course. We are both on the call. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Georgia Manzana. I'm a user experience designer in the digital portfolio team at Havering, and I'm here today with my colleague Matthew Riddell, who is one of our digital business analysts, and we are both working together on this project. Next slide, please, Chantal. So today our goal is to give you an overview of our project as to what's been happening for the past 4 weeks since 1st of December when the project started. Just to remind everyone as to the goals of our project, we had 2 objectives. One was to improve reporting by utilizing Power BI, and the other element was for us to improve our pre-planning advice process by introducing a new digital online form that will enable customers to really being able to purchase a service, book their appointments, and being able to self-serve. So how we are managing our work, we have developed a Trello Kanban board. We are running weekly stand-ups where we bring together key stakeholders and our colleagues, of course, from planning service. And we also use this time to do our sprint planning. And of course, every 2 weeks, we are also looking back and we're doing our sprint retro. So what is going well, key learnings, takeaways, and how we can make improvements. Now, just to remind everyone, when we were referring to improving reporting by using Power BI, there was some pre-work that we had to do around server migration. Now, to explain you what that means, it's a prerequisite to connect Power BI with our software solution, which is Osella. So for this purpose, we need to migrate from our existing old server onto SQL. Now, as part of this exercise, we had to do a lot of document scoping because a big number of our reports that being used by the service, they are historic reports, and we didn't have necessarily clarity as to what needs to go onto Power BI. Therefore, our planning team did an extensive, if I may say, like cleansing exercise. We were able to review over 870 items to decide what needs to be rewritten, what needs to be deleted, or what needs to go straight onto Power BI. Now, as part of this, we also organized for the week 5 that we are now in week 6, we will be running a training program for our staff in order to understand the Osella code rewriting, so how we can rewrite the reports. And we will be running also a trial of the migration. And if that's been successful and we are able to resolve any errors or issues that might occur, we will be doing the live migration. Development on Power BI, our Power BI specialist was able to produce an entity relationship diagram, but also we produced a test data model for core tables on the Oracle server that then will be moved on to SQL. And also, we initially, for the project, we had recruited a Power BI specialist because we had limited resources within our organization. However, recently, our data team recruited some new Power BI specialists that they are permanent staff in our organization, and we were able to coordinate with them to use some of those resources onto this project, and therefore we were able to let our initial contractor go, meaning that will allow us long-term after this project to have in-house knowledge and being able to support our planning team with needs around Power BI long-term. Around booking and payments, we are referring to our front-end form that, as I said, we are trying to create an online form to enable customers to self-serve. We were able to understand how we could integrate with MSC calendar for the planning team. So in the booking, the customers, they will only be able to see the appointments that they are available, meaning that straight away that will be blocked into the staff's calendar. And also we were able to coordinate with our finance team to understand how integration with our payment solution with the Civica Pay will work. And we also gathered all the requirements for that process. And our developer is currently working on this. So today we would also like to take you through our customer form design. And over the next few slides, we will walk you through what we've produced so far. On to the next slide, Santel, please. So our goal here for our customer form design is to deliver an end-to-end user-centered planning pre-application process. And what we mean by that, we want really to enable our customers to self-serve and really reduce the burden on our customer services, but also ensure that the content on our website is very clear, so customers being able to book, pay for the service they need with having us less interaction as they can with any of our contact center staff. Santel, on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So just to remind everyone as to who our users are and what are the challenges they are experiencing at the moment. So for our pre-application advice service, we have two types of users. They are our applicants and agents. So these are our primary users. By applicants, we are referring to our residents, especially householders or small businesses, that they want to receive advice before they submit any planning applications, but also our agents. So as professionals that they are making or attending appointments on behalf of their customers. Now, after speaking with some of our local agents and people, some of our service users internally, we were able to understand that currently our pre-apps is on a PDF form that is non-editable. So customers really have to spend the time to go through the form, print it, fill it in, or send it to us via email or post. But also any appointment bookings and payments are currently made over the phone. So just to give you an indication, every booking, appointment, admin and booking handling, it takes about 30 minutes per appointment, and we have about 725 appointments per year. So you can understand really the volume and the cost here for us from a customer service point of view. But also with the different payment methods that's being used, we are having issues with reconciling the payments. So again, these are like some key challenges for us. So on to the next slide, Santel. So this is just to give you an indication of what our website looks today. So here really the key challenges for us is that our content doesn't really stand out in terms of helping our customers, users understand really what the planning pre-application advice is all about, but also we don't use plain English, meaning again, for a customer that might be using this for the very first time, it might be difficult for them to understand. And as you can see on the other screen is the planning pre-application request form is currently very basic, is the PDF form that we were referring to. So on to the next slide, Chantal. So after several workshops that we conducted, even during the process of us submitting our bid, we were able to map out initially the entire journey as to what are the elements that we can take away and produce it into this new online process. And so this is how we mapped out the new form, like what our new form will look like. I know this is a very small screen, so apologies for that, but we just wanted to show you the end-to-end process that we've created. And over the next slide, Santel, if you don't mind going. Thank you. So what we were able to do, we wanted to highlight here a few key areas of our form. So one of them is the first step really that we looked into is to be able to identify who is the customer. So what is the request about the development type? yeah, and their size, of course. So by that, we were by asking this question, what is the development type that they're looking for, we were able, Santel, sorry, if you're able to press, yes, thank you, highlighting the section, we were able to understand what is the type of development, so who the user is, and based on that to customize our journey and also give to our customers specific price packages based on the service that they need and it's available to them. We also introduced a diary booking, so that means that people are able for the duty planner appointments that currently are happening through a telephone service with our planning officers to choose the date that it's available to them, to choose the slot, which is something is not available. And as we said, it's happening over the phone. So we are taking this completely away. Also, currently, all documents that required for any of the appointments, people have to email them to the service or to our customer services. But here we introduce a functionality that customers, they will be able to upload their documents. And also we will be giving them specific examples, like using photographs to be able to really give them an understanding. What do we mean by a site location plan? Here, what it looks like. This is what you need to upload. What is the size of the file? What is required? And all these will be, guiding the user through the process as to what are the information that we need from them. And last but not least, we through our online payment, we will be able to highlight at the end of the process the summary as to what information the user has provided to us, what is the total cost, and of course for them being able to pay. Thank you very much. Matthew, over to you for any other comments or thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, just that we're going to take the Dynamics 365 reference through to a seller, file name, prefix all the file names in Civica 360 with the same reference, and also take it through Civica Pay to Oracle Fusion to just get around this issue of reconciling payments with applications. And I guess worth mentioning as well that all the Havering customer-facing forms are Frankenstein's monster, really, of Love Clean Streets and Dynamics 2011 and Firm Step Achieve forms, as well as in-page CMS forms. So we're looking to be moving everything over to Dynamics 365, and we mentioned at the last show and tell that there is this CRM program, corporate program happening in parallel. So it may be that the pre-apps form is the first D365 form, which includes both bookings, file upload and payments all in one, and that is fully integrated in the end-to-end. So it's kind of a challenge and an opportunity at the same time. Obviously, it helps us with our crystallizing our design standard for all our corporate forms going forward, but it's also obviously a challenge in that we need the resource around it, and our CRM strategy needs to be carefully worked out on a corporate basis alongside this project. I think you've got everything else there, Georgia. Thanks.
That's brilliant. Both thank you, Georgia and Matt. It's a really good overview. Right, so on to just the final slides from ourselves.
Sorry, Santel, I think Terry has a question. I don't know if it's for us, but there was a hand.
Hi, sorry, I've with the pre-app process, so that price at the end is are there caveats?
What do you mean? No, this is just an example, Terry, just to showcase at the end how it's going to look like. This is just a wireframe, like a design.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, I understand, but in terms of, I understand what you're saying is sort of, to be more efficient, you're allowing customers to access and go through a process to come up with a cost for a pre-app. Is that cost then the cost, or are there caveats built into the language of the form to say, we said it's £97, but it actually might be, because obviously with pre-app I think is quite a costly process, isn't it, that often doesn't wash its face, is my understanding.
So long as they give us their development size for their plans accurately, some square meters, number of dwellings and so on, that generates a fee level and that's what the service costs. Yeah, but I mean, if you're talking about what does the back office effort cost, what's the development cost with what we're doing here, that's a different matter. But yeah,
I wasn't meaning is that covering that. I just meant, you know, you're kind of, if you're offline, so to speak, and you go through the process, I mean, it's a really good idea. I think this, the price that you're given, the quote at the end is the quote, and it's as accurate as you can possibly be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unless, as I say, they select the wrong radio button in the form for development size, and then they pay the wrong amount, and we need to have exceptional refunds, it will give them the accurate price for the advice that they get. They're going to get the advice in a more structured way for each of those different options.
Yeah.
There are obvious efficiencies because we don't have the handling times with the customer services operatives. We don't have the back office picking up emails, which may or may not have all the required documentation to be able to provide the advice to the customer, make the booking for them. There's different SLAs there depending on what the capacity of the service looks like and everything else they're doing. This will surface up 3 structured Monday, Wednesday, Friday appointments with 3 appointments per day. So
your interface with a booking system and with finance system, I think you said.
Yeah.
That's really
whole shebang. Back office doesn't need to do anything in terms of the actual admin, and the contact center can effectively switch it off completely. We don't even want them to do on behalf of for customers, because that would mean them picking up files from some inbox that the customer sends them into. It's 80% businesses, so we think it's right to be able to ask these people to self-serve where they are householders, residents, maybe not having English as a first language, maybe feeling digitally excluded, like we do in other areas such as property licensing, where we mainly deal with businesses. Maybe we need to explain that people need to use local services, councils, libraries, stuff like that, or just friends and family who regularly use these services. I mean, if you've got a credit card and you're used to buying things online, and you've got an email address and you can upload a file, you're there.
So I'm not a planner, by the way, but I understand that pre-app can be quite an costly process. It doesn't always cover. It's also, this sounds like a very interesting idea.
We hope we clear a web content at the front end. We should see an uptick in demand at the moment. So the web content which Georgia showcased there is kind of really about how we work and about planning, and it's sort of quite opaque and weird as a service user. What we want it to be more about is, why do I want to use this service when I'm submitting my planning application? How can it help me? And if it screams that out better, and we have the nice design which George is showing there in the product called Figma, but we obviously trying to get right using D365 and GDS design toolkits online, obviously, then we think we'll get a greater uptick in demand and more revenue as well.
Thank you.
Okay, just to add something, Terry, on that note, maybe because, of course, we presented the full journey, but we didn't present every single screen. So just to give you an understanding on the cost, what this form, the purpose that it serves is that, as an example, for our duty planner appointments at the moment, our planning service is offering 2 options. One of them is for a householder is a telephone advice, which is an appointment for 20 minutes, and the other one is a written advice. When, as a customer, as an example, I select I'm a householder, the only 2 options I'm going to see is those 2 packages, if I may say. And it will have the cost, but also underneath it will have a brief explanation as to what I'm purchasing is all about. So what do I get for the money I pay?
Upfront.
And then then at the end, you will see the final cost. Next time, during the next show and tell, because we are currently developing this in Power Apps, we will be able to have a fully functional, clickable prototype, and we will walk you through the full journey of how the process will look like based on the different scenarios.
So I've just got one quick question, sorry, so I don't want to hog it.
Of course.
You are obviously moving, or sort of already in the Microsoft Dynamics space. What do you use for your planning application management?
well, we've got the national portal built by TerraQuest, which I think everybody has, and that obviously is integrated into Acela, which is our back office system. So our, yeah, Acela is our not a well-known system. They have about 20 councils in England. Is the solution we use across the surface, across planning and building control. So and essentially all we're doing is bolting on an integrated customer-facing form into Acela, and then doing a bit more in terms of a workflow within Acela for managing the pre-apps, and then passing
this will create
to
a record in Acela. In other words, what somebody's been through this and said, thanks, yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very useful.
Great questions. Okay. So we'll have an opportunity for a few more questions in a minute as well, if needed. But just to follow up on the next Pathfinders. They are sort of there'll be the monthly project updates for blog posts on Medium, which hopefully you've all got access to, and then monthly show and tells. So the next one is actually on the 29th, I believe, the Tuesday of March, and there's a final showcase show at the end of April, which I believe is also Tuesday the 26th. And for any of you who would like to join those, please feel free and share the information to anyone else who you feel may be interested. And then there'll be final reports published shortly after with all sort of lessons learned and sort of areas for sharing, etc. So now open to discussion for any more questions. I will stop sharing my screen and go back to saying hello to everybody. So, right, anybody have any questions? There's been a lot of questions going back and forth, which is great. So thank you very much for all the interaction. There's no hands up at the moment and no extra questions. So, oh, there's Georgia, were you just waving a hand there?
No, I was just clapping. Well done, everyone.
Yes, yeah, very well done. So it was great, the great overview from all of you. Thank you very much. And so, okay. So any more questions at this stage, or we can wrap up a little early, but we've had a really good overview. Wonderful. Okay, looks good from everyone. Thank you all very much for interacting, and thank you all very much for the presentations from each of you. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Brilliant. Right, well, we'll wrap up early then, and thank you all very much, and we will look forward to seeing you all again. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chantal.
Bye bye.
now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.